Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I would like to ask Monica for the roll call of the trustees to confirm a quorum.
Trustees, when I say your name, please say if you're here. Say present. Chair Chen.
Present.
Vice Chair Price Jones.
Present.
What else?
Okay.
Trustee Johnson. Trustee Mattia Novak. Trustee Moore.
Present.
Trustee Pastrone.
Present.
Trustee Rodriguez. Trustee Stanton Buttram. Trustee Tuminello.
Present.
Trustee Uvala.
Present.
Chair Chen, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Monica, could you please take the vote?
Sure. Trustees, when I call your name, please state your vote. Chair Chen.
Approve?
Vice Chair Price Jones.
Approve.
Trustee Johnson. Trustee Mattia Novak. Trustee Moore.
Approve.
Trustee Pastrone.
Approve.
Good morning, Trustee Rodriguez.
Approve.
Okay.
Whatever it is.
Trustee Stanton Buttram. Trustee Tuminello.
Approve.
Trustee Uvala.
Approve.
Chair Chen, the motion passes.
Thank you, Monica. Trustees, as this is a workshop and informal meeting, please feel free to get up and help yourself to refreshments during the session, especially Trustee Pastrone, who's closest to the food. At this time, I will turn the meeting over to Dr. Lindsay and the Budget Committee Chair, Sandy Moore, for any opening remarks and to get the workshop started.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. I think you're going to see a really comprehensive, well-done report by our spectacular staff here of Melissa Beardmore, Andrew Little, and Sue Callahan, so thank you for your work. I'd like to say as we go along to the trustees, this can be very overwhelming. This can be a lot of words and a lot of numbers, and it can get confusing. So by all means, stop, ask questions, raise your hand. You've got 3 experts here in front of you ready to help you. And even after this is finished, if you still need help, pardon me, Vice President Beardmore has volunteered. If you need help, she will find a time to meet with you before our vote on at our Tuesday meeting. So please take advantage of that. So thank you, and I'm happy to see all of you here.
And I just want to thank everybody. I was hoping more people would be here, especially with the topic, but I want to thank Melissa and Andrew and Sue as well. They work magic every year. We can't figure out how they do it, but they come up with a balanced budget for us to take a look at and the board to determine. So you're here to hear them. So Melissa, do you want to open?
All right, thank you very much. So as has been shared, this is a work session. You are not voting today. We will vote on the budget on Tuesday of next week. We'll take any feedback you have from today, if necessary, incorporate it into, I guess we weren't,
Sorry. There I am. Okay, we will take any feedback that you have today, incorporate it if necessary into an updated budget, and then you, again, will vote on Tuesday. We then submit the budget to the county executive shortly thereafter, and we are scheduled to present our budget formally to the county executive on March 12th. You attend via Zoom. The president, myself, and Andrew attend in person. In his office. Great. So this is merely an official disclosure that everything is draft until it's approved by you on Tuesday. And we're going to review the operating and capital budgets endorsed. And thank you, Trustee Moore and the Budget Committee, as endorsed by the Budget Committee in their several meetings over the last 4 to 5 months. We're also going to take a little bit of time to provide some context for the budget, what's happening in the current year, give you an update on the academic portfolio and resources review work. I will say you'll notice little, and I'll point them out, little in italics, little notes on the slides that we flash out there that says see page whatever. That's the backup budget materials that you have in Diligent. So if you want to see them bigger, you want to take a deeper dive, that's what those little footnotes are referring to. And I'll remind you of that as we go forward. So, as we talk today, it's helpful to be reminded of our mission and how it focuses our work. And again, before we get into the details, we will spend a few minutes talking about the context for the budget. And this report, again, this is a report we've shared with the Board Budget Committee several times and also with the Audit and Finance Committee as they did their work. This is our operating budget status report as of December 31st, again, for this current fiscal year. And if you want to refer to it a little bit larger, it's on page 5 of your background materials. So overall, we do have a balanced budget overall, and we're in our appropriation authority, if you will. And however, there are some areas, as you see in footnotes 7 and 8, where we have a little bit of work to do, and I'll talk about that in a second. So starting at the top, some items of note. Tuition and fee revenue is projected to exceed the budget by 3%. That's due to increased enrollment, and likely will change. Again, this is as of 12/31, so fall numbers are solid. We're projecting out what's going to happen for spring, but it does look like this is a good estimate of where we are going to exceed the budget. The Tuition Stabilization Fund, that's what that TSF acronym means, and auxiliary transfer, that is projected to be below the budget, the budgeted amount, and that's due to the improved tuition and fee revenue that I just mentioned and expenditure savings. That $2.3 million represents the difference between total revenues and total expenses. It's a balancing number, if you will. Generally, I have to say, and tenured board members will know this, that generally we add to the TSF, AKA rainy day fund, AKA fund balance each year. And it's evidence, and we'll talk about this throughout the presentation, it's evidence of what we have shared with the board over the years. And it's why, candidly, we started doing our fiscal resiliency work years ago, and more on that in a few minutes. The headline here is that what we predicted is starting to happen. Our financial model is struggling to sustain operations in the future and is starting to show signs of stress, and we're starting to spend down our tuition stabilization fund, or fund balance. You can see in footnotes 4 through 6 that we do have savings and expenditures, primarily in salaries and benefits, et cetera. And again, these are estimates, but those amounts are pretty low, 0 to 2%. All the way on that right-hand column there, those negative numbers, that indicates savings. So those numbers are lower. Sometimes in that instruction line, we would see, I don't know, $2 million in estimated savings. So just to give you kind of a benchmark there. So then when you move down into lines 7 and 8, the plant and institutional support lines, those are positive numbers, because we're projecting that we're going to be over in those lines. So these are line items. Overall, we're still within budget, but in those categories, we're projecting that we're going to overspend. Line 7, this is not a surprise if you've looked at your BG&E bill, personally at your house. Line 7, we're projected to be slightly over due to increased costs for utilities and snow removal, okay? Line 8, that is over due to increased contracted services for outside legal counsel as we have our vacancies in our general counsel area. This means that later in the spring, I will go to the county council and ask them permission to transfer savings from those 4, 5, and 6 line items into those areas. Okay? I'll keep moving unless there are any questions. So on the next slide, Andrew is going to share some key environmental scan observations, give you a lay of the land of what higher ed and ACC are dealing with, if you will, as context for the budget.
Good morning. I think much of this will be reminders of previous presentations given by the vice presidents and presidents to the board over the last year or so. But it's something we check in on as we're building the budget. What's the environment shifting like? Making sure we're paying attention to certain things that might impact us, not just in this year, but in future years. And what we're seeing is definitely continued increasing in headcount. That's something we've talked about a few times. Increasing FTE, but that's starting to slow a little bit. Melissa mentioned in the projection for tuition and fee revenue that we're through the fall term. That's solid numbers. Spring is still evolving. It's still happening, but we're starting to see the FTE growth slowing a little bit in the spring term. And so that'll come into play when we talk about the multi-year planning tool later in our presentation today. Dual enrollment is driving a lot of our enrollment growth right now. I think we've talked about that before. And we're seeing a little bit of a shift in the spring term recently to the 25 to 29-year-old group driving a lot of our growth this term. Not that we're seeing drops in those other areas. Last year, I think we mentioned the 20 age plus was driving a lot of it. So it was like the 20s, the 25s, up to the 30s. That the other categories are still growing. They're just not growing as fast as that 25 to 29 group. And we're continuing to see growth in our minority populations in both the Black African American and Hispanic Latino communities. Anticipated enrollment challenges. You've heard of this anticipated enrollment cliff. Anne Arundel County has been isolated from that. They've been able to attract growth into the county that has then worked its way to the college. So we've been sort of isolated from that, but it doesn't mean that we're always going to be isolated from it. And so we start to see a little bit of conflicting information. Statewide, they're talking about the high school age population declining and how that could feed its way into the higher education industry. Right now, if you read some of the statistics from our master plan, we're likely going to be able to control that because the county is a place where people want to come and live, and so it's bringing in more to the community to that. But it's something we have to pay attention to because there is a decline in that population, and I think it's the 28 to 30 time frame. 2028 to 30, that's expected to start hitting the populations that would be coming to our college. And so we just have to pay attention to it. Hopefully we'll be able to continue to attract people to the county and to the college, but it's something that definitely will play into our future year projections.
And Andrew?
Yes.
So 28 to 30 timeframe, what kind of extent, percent?
What they're saying is basically we'll revert back to today. Right, so it's not a huge decline, but as we grow 2-3% a year, we might not be able to count on that to continue, and so we will see some potential decline in that population, but not like a cliff. The state, Anne Arundel County, is not anticipating a cliff at this point, but there is some slight decline, and given the significance that enrollment has on the institution, even a 2 and 3% decline can have significant results.
So in our budget, we have a $5 increase in tuition, which is very painful. We probably will see continued rise in tuition, or maybe you'll get to that. How will that impact these kinds of numbers you're talking about?
That is one of the key conversations we continue to have with the Budget Committee. We've talked about this in years past, but to sort of bring everybody up to speed on where it is, there is a line where increasing tuition so much causes a decline in enrollment, and you could put yourself in a position where you've raised tuition but lost tuition revenue. Right, and that's a big challenge. And we saw it in the past when we had some significant tuition rate increases. We saw students decline in the number of credits they were taking. And in our prior conversations with them, that was exactly what they portrayed to us, is that if you keep increasing, we're going to have to cut back on credits because we cannot afford it. So we're very conscious of the increases that we're proposing to make sure that it is somewhat sustainable. It is in the 3% range. It's somewhat in line with inflation, although we're hearing trends of 2%-ish inflation going forward. That's what everybody's targeting. A $5 tuition increase, a dollar rate seems higher, and it's higher than what we had historically done for the last couple of years, but it's approximately 3% on total tuition and fees that are charged at the credit hour level. So it is definitely something we have to keep our eye on. We will talk about that also in the multi-year planning tool section where we'll sort of model out what this looks like. But I think you're spot on that the trends are pointing towards continued tuition rate increases if we can't get increased support from the state to get that stool stood up a little bit higher, or the county, and we'll talk through that in a little bit more detail.
Madam Chair? We've talked about this in years past when I served on the Budget Committee as well, about the elasticity of pricing and the fact that we have to be very, very sensitive to it. I do think there's some good feeling in that we rate out really well to our other schools, and that's something that we really need to maintain to minimize the issue that you were just going through. People dropping credits because they can't afford to take them at this time. So I'm always very sensitive to that, but I do like the fact that we measure up really well against other institutions even now, so without their increases.
Right. Absolutely, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other initiatives we do to help maintain that affordability for students, but we have different dials that we can turn to help a student, not just financial aid, but also textbook affordability initiatives, and we'll work through some of that as well. But our goal ideally is to have no tuition rate increase, or at least the net cost to the student, keep that flat if we can. It just is challenging given the revenue sources we're seeing from both the county and state. Some other just quick highlights, and I'll just click to the next slide. They don't necessarily track, but operating cost inflation increases, we're seeing it, right? So as certain things, supply chain issues have sort of worked themselves out. We're not seeing that as much anymore. We are definitely continuing to see that competitive and evolving labor market. We still have positions that we're having difficulty to recruit. One other thing that's worth noting is we are seeing improvements in retention, based on the continued efforts for retention and student equitable outcomes. So that is something we continue to see improvement in and progress, and that has been incorporated into our conversations as we continue to move through the budget development process, but also the presentation today.
Thank you, Andrew. Great questions. So as promised, as additional part of our context, and then we will get into the actual numbers and the budget for fiscal 27, we wanted to provide an update on our fiscal resiliency work for the reasons we just talked about, specifically our academic portfolio and resources review. And we have a couple quotes to share with you to remind the board of the journey. The board chair's comments at the beginning, in September, at the beginning of the board meeting in September 2024, set the context for the work that we're going to discuss today, and her excellent comments really underscore the reality of ongoing change and the college's need to operate in a fiscally sustainable, efficient, and mission-aligned way. And I think it's also important as you think about resources, we're talking about budget. Resources can mean dollars, of course, but also folks' time. It's a huge resource that I think we don't always talk about. So I offer that thought. Further, our board chair, just a few months ago, emphasized these points over and over as the chair of the budget committee, most recently in November. And her comments specifically mentioned the academic portfolio and resources review work, emphasizing the data-driven decision-making and student success components. And I think both comments are really important to provide the context to affirm the work and the board's continued support to ensure the college is resilient into the future.
Melissa, I have some comments
Great.
I'd like to share.
Please.
That's okay. So, to the college, we are meeting at an important moment for this college. Across the country, community colleges are facing declining enrollments, shifting demographics, and increasing public scrutiny. At the same time, beginning in July of this year, 2026, new federal accountability requirements will significantly increase public reporting on program-level outcomes, including, importantly, post-completion earnings. These changes are real. They will affect funding, enrollment behavior, public perception of AACC, and our fellow colleges. As a board, our responsibility is clear. We are charged with setting policy and providing fiscal oversight. In times of change, these responsibilities matter even more. To that end, let me clarify one important point. The academic portfolio and resources review was initiated by the Board of Trustees. We asked for structured, data-informed review of our academic offerings to ensure alignment with student success, workforce and transfer realities, and institutional sustainability. We cannot responsibly approve budgets without understanding whether our programs are producing strong student outcomes and using our resources effectively. Therefore, this work is not optional. Having this level of information and review is critical to our work as a board. In fact, it is part of our fiduciary duty. I also want to address the recent discussions about a vote of no confidence. Disagreement is part of shared governance. We understand that and support informed, meaningful discussion and debate. At the same time, leadership during structural change is both necessary and difficult. Through continued dialogue with faculty leadership, Dr. Milner has reaffirmed faculty curricular oversight by confirming EPC votes on APR-related program suspensions. She has been transparent about the accountability landscape ahead. These actions demonstrate responsible academic leadership and a clear respect for established governance roles. This board fully supports the president and her team as they move forward with the work we directed. We will continue to support the difficult but necessary conversations taking place about the college's future sustainability and student outcomes. For that reason, we support continued implementation of the academic portfolio review. We support transparent dialogue, and we support Dr. Milner as she leads us through this period of necessary change. Our obligation is not to preserve comfort. It is to preserve the mission. Ultimately, our shared commitment must be to student success, especially by improving retention, completion, transfer and workforce success, and equity in outcomes. This is not about compliance. It is about stewardship of our students, of our community, and the public funding entrusted to us. This board cares deeply about student success and the long-term health of this institution. With that in mind, let us all carry forward within our respective roles of faculty, administration, and the Board of Trustees to ensure the continued viability and sustainability of this college. Thank you. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you very much. I'm not even going to read this slide because that's all right, so thank you very much, Trustee Chen. We'll jump into it really as a review for the board and especially for our newer board members. So our journey, if you will, started more than 10 years ago in this work. And we were reading literature, all of us, conferences we attended. We were really bombarded with presentations, white papers, newspaper articles in the Chronicle, et cetera, about the future of higher education and, candidly, the unsustainability of what we'll call the business model was truly inescapable. Closer to home, as you shared, Trustee Chen, our fiscal realities, as we will look later at the multi-year projection, looking out 5 to 10 years, we were challenged in our ability to continue to do our work at business as usual. And we used to try to be everything to everyone, but our budget was limiting our ability to fund that model. Middle States was introducing new approaches, looking at institutional effectiveness, data-driven assessment, focusing on outcomes, and our long-term board member, emeritus, Dr. Jim Johnson, former dean at Howard University for years, chair of the Budget Committee, asked us not to just, we've heard this term, trim the hedges, right? Rip them out. He was referring to the difficult work of looking at our academic programs and being courageous, I think, in that review. So we knew we needed to change. The challenge was how. We were fortunate. There was no urgent need. There was no urgent current budget crisis, but we could see as we looked in the out years what the challenges were going to be. So we knew we needed to start taking action, and as you mentioned, Trustee Chen, the board approved contracts with a national expert, RBK Group, on various aspects of that work. We started with Administrative Services Review, we love acronyms, or ASR, looking at the resources outside of the classroom first, our administrative structures. And then we moved into phase 2, which is where we are now, the review of the academic portfolio and resources. We did start slowly in 2015. We didn't wait for that work. We started incrementally. We wanted to create administrative efficiencies focus on student success. We improved the class schedule. We were reallocating positions. That is the name of the game. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. We implemented a new module in our student information system, the student planning module, which is a mom of a student here at ACC as a really whiz-bang tool for a student to plan their academic journey with us and to register from it. So that was a huge implementation that really helped with student success and was really transformational. We also looked at our administrative, our HR and our payroll systems to be more efficient. I'm embarrassed to say that we did have multi-part forms that we were using to track leave, for example. So we moved to a more automated system to be more efficient. Talked about the strategic plan. The work was formally adopted when the board approved a new strategic plan in June of 2016. And that's where we manifested this focus on access to success, with an intentional focus on equity and on students completing their goals. And that continued into the future. As I mentioned, we did identify some goals and some opportunities for savings and we did this, I don't know how we did it, during the pandemic. That's when we were in the midst of doing our administrative services review, basically a review of operations, like I said, outside of the classroom, and we did identify opportunities for savings. We identified almost a little over 5% of opportunities in our budget, and many of those recommendations we implemented and were folded into our budget, savings in various areas. We did invest, though. It wasn't all cut. This work is not always about reduction. Same with the academic portfolio and resources review. That work does identify, hey, these are some areas of success, some areas where you want to invest, areas where student outcomes can be improved. So we did that work. Then, okay, a little bit, and I'll talk about APR in a second. The board approved our new strategic plan very recently. And you'll see, it's highlighted in, I guess, orange, where that work is represented at least twice in these highlighted outcomes in the current plan. Under innovation and creativity, you see references related to student success, continuous improvement, and strategic use of resources. Remember, resources, it's dollars, but it's also people's time. Under opportunity, you see reference to degrees, et cetera, that align with student and community demand. We took that program review that we were doing in 2015, 2016 work, and really the APR work took it to the next level. Again, as we've shared, approved by the board, and we have operationalized the work. We'll talk about that in a second. This is the framework that we used for the analysis with that external consulting firm, and that Dr. Milner has provided several updates to the board along the way. The board approved the contract with our PK group. This was the scope of work that, again, included reviews of the academic portfolio review, really important in a data-driven manner, and reviewed the college's posture on tenure, had professional development opportunities for those who were responsible for the future administration of the framework. Our PK group actually came and presented an update to the board at the December 2022 meeting with final recommendations provided to the board at the May 2023 meeting. So it's been a journey, and we've kept the board updated along the way. Recommendations, as you see here, related to tenure and programs, et cetera. Again, so there's a highlight here in May 2023. These were the specific findings that were presented to the board, really to pave the way for the operational change that Chair Chen just talked about, to better meet student needs and to be more efficient. I say we as if I did it. We designed and implemented a template, a tool used by each school to analyze standard data annually in a transparent and collaborative way. And we, embracing shared governance, we shared that data widely so the college community understood, for example, that 45% of our headcount is in 5 academic programs. So jumping forward, the work continues since that May 2023 update, and we are making progress toward efficiency and effective use of our resources. Progress in terms of academic program compression, if you will, down from 45% in 2023 to that 42.6% that you see on the slide, and greater efficiencies in course sections as sections during enrollment growth. So more strategic scheduling. And on the next slide, that continues. Courses.
Vice President.
Oh, so sorry.
No.
Please.
I just didn't want to jump in.
Yes.
the
Sorry.
wrong time.
I'm on a roll
Can we go
here.
back 2 slides, please?
Two.
There we go. For the benefit of our trustees who were not here during that initial, can you tell us what the 5 academic programs, do you have that were in highest demand? If we don't have it, that's okay, you can get it back to us.
Yep.
It's on a later slide. Oh, never mind, it's on a later slide. I'm sorry, and now trustee Tuminello just told me that I am remiss.
I don't think it is on the slide.
Okay, so I think on a later slide, it is showing that we have little less compression. We're starting to spread that out more. What RPK found was that we had sort of a top 10 and then a top 5 where almost all of our enrollment was. And those were largely, and if my deans are in the room, they can help me here too. Those are largely business, nursing, psychology. What are the 2 others? Transfer studies.
The big one.
IT. There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, where were we? Current status? It's a group
What-
effort here.
What is transfer studies? Exactly.
Transfer studies is sort of an umbrella type of program where students can study almost everything, but it is geared toward transferring to the 4-year programs. So it's more of a gen ed type of program.
Since we're paused, I wonder if I could ask
please.
a question. A couple slides back, you mentioned tenure, and I wondered, there was an assessment on lifting the tenure eligibility cap, and I wondered what that meant. If I'm not mistaken, it's 6 years for tenure at this point, or?
The cap was defined, I'm assuming, by the board at some point, maybe in the 90s, before all of us were here. And it is a 62% cap. That means that no more than 62% of the faculty could be tenured at a point. So we asked our PK Consulting Group to do an assessment on that, and their recommendation to the board was to prepare to lift the cap at some point, so 100% of the faculty would have access to tenure or tenure track positions. They also recommended that we make sure we line up parameters and a process by which we could operationalize that.
So
before
by
we
lifting,
lift the
you
cap.
actually mean removing it? So
Yes.
Okay, got
Yeah,
it, very
removing
good.
that 60%.
I noticed that later on, and this may be off topic, but I think it connects to this, that part-time faculty, and this was across several colleges in Maryland, tend to encourage the use of retired full-time faculty as part-time faculty. I thought that was a very interesting point. Thank you. very
And
much.
all of that with the tenure, even after the assessment and the recommendations with RPK, is subject to union bargaining.
Yeah, yes, okay, thank you.
So all of that kind of happened at the same time.
Appreciate it.
Madam Chair, if I may, it also appeared it was kind of arbitrary. In other words, we couldn't figure out why the cap was even there, because there was nobody around that could tell us.
Fair.
We had no institutional knowledge on it, so it didn't make sense to us as a board, as a current board, so that's what happened.
Just a personal comment, when I was on faculty here, when I was hired, the first thing I was told was, you will never get tenure.
Oh, interesting.
Like, well, that stings, So, but anyway. I mean, I remember those days.
I think I did it. So was that done? Yeah. Nope. Is that cap lifted? Nope.
No, not yet, okay.
Subject to bargaining.
Any other questions or comments on the academic portfolio resources review work? Because we are going to slide into the budget a little bit more, but I think that's an important conversation. All right. Here we go. So a little bit more context, smidge more, and then we will look at numbers. So our vision is on the screen. That's what we strive for. Our mission is how we're going to get there, and we have mission mandates that drive how we get there, and the mission provides the context for our budget. Again, the budget is the tool to help us accomplish our goals. We know the board is interested in how efficient we are, and we are accountable as to how we compare, as several trustees have commented, Trustee Uvula, how we compare to other Maryland community colleges. And a little pause for a little celebration. We do hold ourselves to high standards, and the Government Finance Officers Association, or GFOA, agrees with us. We received an inaugural award in 2017, and each year that we have applied, we took 2023 off. It was a little busy with COVID, et cetera, but kudos to my left to Sue Callahan for her vision and dedication in pursuing this GFOA award. So thank you, Sue. MHEC provides comparative information about the Maryland community colleges. There are little footnotes here if you want to take a deeper dive. Looks like page 4125 on how we compare. On the screen shows some common measures we use for how we are allocating our resources, how we are allocating our budget compared to other Maryland community colleges. We invest in what's important, and that's evidenced by that third bullet. They're showing as a percentage, we are the highest in allocating our operating budget in support of our students. So in those instruction and academic support budget categories are the highest among the Maryland community colleges. Trustee Uvula, your excellent point about our tuition rate. The last several years, we've had the fourth lowest tuition. That's among all of our Maryland community college peers, not just the large colleges. So that's on, I think it says page 25. It's really small on my screen. So if you want to take a deeper dive, check out page 25. Regarding the affordability, which we've already talked about, we'll talk more about it, our affordability mission mandate, we provide some measures on this slide. Really important, the maximum Pell Award, that's a need-based federal grant for undergrad students, Pell. That's estimated to fully cover tuition fees and estimated books for students. So those students who are fully Pell eligible, that's good news for them. And as always, as my colleague Vali Melsom is behind me, are always grateful for the support of our fantabulous AACC Foundation and its donors in providing private donations for scholarships for our students. Almost $2 million budgeted for this year. 10 years ago, it was $450,000. Wherever you are, Vali. There you are. So hats off to our fabulous foundation and foundation board and donors. That's a huge, significant sum of money for our students, and in addition to the operating budget support for strategic programs that our foundation provides. We will talk about this later. We've already talked about it a little bit. This budget does have a moderate $5 in-county tuition rate increase, as Andrew shared, in the realm of a cost of living or COLA type increase at about 3%. And Andrew also mentioned this, our affordability efforts are also manifesting in our textbook affordability efforts to help offset a tuition rate increase, and in fact projected to save the student an annualized equivalent of $8 of tuition in the current year. So we expect those affordability efforts to continue into fiscal 27. This is an example. We do work oftentimes in support of students, excellent for students, not great for the bottom line, but still very, very important work. Taking efficiency a step further, there it goes. We make great efforts to contain cost. Salaries and benefits are 85% of our budget, but we do look at that other 15% of categories for savings wherever we can find it. you might notice the dates, the years here, they're a little old. Okay, Nell, yes. So that's, we keep this slide here because it's important. It shows the work that we've done, but it also demonstrates there's fewer and fewer opportunities for that savings. Once you've found that savings, the delta, the incremental cost savings is harder to find. Project Sunburst, I thought maybe someone would ask that question. That's an old grant that we received years ago. That's the solar panels that are on our parking lot A, carport solar panels. Okay, so that's energy savings. That's a long story, but we do see some savings there. So I mentioned compensation is.
Melissa,
sorry.
can
Of
I-
course.
VP Kravelich. So talking about efficiency, all about efficiency. You gave a presentation in December about AI and introducing AI to, well, we already have it, but growing it at AACC. Can you talk to us about efficiencies? I think I'm talking about operational efficiencies, not anything related to academic programs, that the board can look at in terms of how we might save money in the future. I mean, we're going to have to spend money to get there, but what you envision for our future in terms of efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because I think the good news is we're not engaging in that conversation today for the first time. You know, we engaged in that conversation for the first time 3.5 years ago when we made the determination that we needed to upgrade our infrastructure, our back end of our ERP systems, look at other critical technologies, our entirety of our ecosystem, right? That was, you know, going back to the work of the initial work of RBK, the creation of an aligned IT organization that in some time could produce the efficiencies that you're asking about today. So to you know, credit to the board, this work has been done a while ago, right? And we're starting to see, you know, we're right on the precipice of taking our biggest step toward that, which is the migration to our colleague SaaS environment, which will happen over spring break this year. But that's only really part of it. There have been a lot of other efficiencies that have led up to that in prior to our go live with SaaS, which includes, you know, our move to Ethos and our ILP platform. These are other tools that we've deployed, not to mention ADP work, which has been significant. So, you know, Andrew and I just had a meeting yesterday and we talked about, you know, it's great that we are finishing a major project to start to create the foundation for efficiency rather than engaging in it today. So once we're on the other side of SaaS and we've got our foundation in place, now we're going to be able to start to look at other big initiatives. For example, we just look at unified communications. I talked with Mike Reese yesterday. That's going to take an investment, but on the other side of that, our telephony and our phone systems are going to be far more cost efficient, as well as all the other technologies in our ecosystem. Now, Dr. Milner and I had a conversation yesterday too. Now, how do we start to produce not just technology to create the efficiencies, but to be able also to create the procedures and the processes? How do we streamline our efforts so that, you know, we can simplify? And that's all work that we are engaged in right now. Specifically about AI, and I'll wrap this up quickly, you know, we are just on the verge of that right now and taking a collaborative approach to getting a lot of voices involved, not only on the academic side of AI, but also on the, you know, information technology side for information security, infrastructure, how it's going to affect our ERP. So we've got a good plan in place. You know, it's a journey for the AI piece, so I can't tell you exactly how that's going to look. Although what we've done up to this point is going to enable what you're asking for in the future.
So technology, would you say, is the future of AACC?
Well, previous organization I worked for, the president used to say that all organizations are technology organizations, and I don't think that's any more true now than today. So, I mean, although, you know, I do think technology is important, I still think excellent educational experiences is why we're here. And the work that we do as an IT organization is there to support. I said this before, I don't care if it's 2 cans on a string, as long as the student can learn better, that's the technology we want to put in place. Now, we know we're far beyond 2 cans on a string, but we're starting to work toward that. Thank you.
Could you clarify, Dr. Kralovich? Just because I, have mastered TSF, SaaS,
Oh,
Yeah, software as a service. And, SaaS has become kind of a catch-all terminology for our innovation, for our technology ecosystem, redesign.
Can I put it down, I'm
Oh, yeah, sure.
like this level technology-wise. It's moving software that we used to have in our careers building in this really cool room. That's where the software that runs the college was residing. Now it's moved up to the cloud. So software as a service, it's there. We're not hosting it on premises. The software that runs, right, the whole college.
Yeah.
Now it's like a subscription that you
Oh,
have.
Everybody's laughing at my technology.
And now they're laughing at me.
Folks, this is not a laughing matter. This is very important.
But it makes it more stable, and you're not hosting it with all these servers in a very air-conditioned room, and it's up in the cloud, and you're pulling down the updates, et cetera. It's more, okay.
sure.
Yeah,
It's a lot more,
Fair?
it's a lot more
Okay.
secure, too.
Correct.
absolutely, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'll keep it simple for a minute, too, in terms of AI. I can tell you on this side of the table, from an operations perspective, how does AI help? AI is so big, AI is chatbots, et cetera. It's Excel. AI has helped us we talked about how resources are not just dollars, but people's time. AI helps us to be more efficient in how we do our work. A memo that I might have had to have written, take this document, cut and paste here. Now I can put it into AI and say, take this document, take that document, take that document, make it do these 3 things, and ChatGPT, or what's the other one? Copilot does that for you. It takes 4 hours of my time into 10 minutes, and then I can work with something. So I think that's a practical application. All the fabulous things that Drs. Milner and Kralovich are working on as team leads for AI institutionally, that's the practical application of more efficiency in the work that we do. Is that fair? Okay. We could do 4 hours on that.
Yeah, no,
Couldn't we?
No, good.
We need a workshop on that.
We need a workshop.
These folks could do that. All right, so a little bit more context, because we talked about how budget is how salaries and benefits are 85-ish% of our budget. So an update on the status of our compensation program. Really important, and we'll look at this in a second, as the board and the board budget committee have set as a priority within our budget, you'll see this in a few slides, that we are able to attract and retain talented and diverse faculty and staff. We have a great benefits program. We have a wonderful flexible work policy that the board approved. At the end of the day, we are not volunteers, my colleagues, but compensation is an important aspect. I'm sorry. Yes, you are. We aren't. Sorry.
Rub it in, just rub it in.
We've doubled your pay.
Yeah, right.
Sorry. But it is important in our ability to attract and retain competent folks. And, if the board wants to hear, the anecdotes, we can do that, of stories of, we are challenged many times when we have a vacancy and we need to hire a very competent, skilled person. We are often unable to meet folks' salary demands because they can go, in certain areas, they can go to a technology company or they can go to a hospital, sometimes even to the county, and have a higher wage. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So compensation, There are a lot of information in your materials, so please take the time to read it, pages 16 to 18, to put compensation into context. We have a wonderful college history of examining our administrative practices. The board set a policy. We had some updates of both of the compensation systems for both faculty and staff years ago, all guided by our comp policy. And for the most part, we've been fully implemented in those new I call them new, but okay, new compensation systems. And the challenge is, in order to maintain the fidelity of those compensation systems, we need adequate funding. Adequate funding means enough to keep pace with the increasing labor market. Okay, so COLA world, cost of living, generally, as Andrew mentioned, it's about 2 to 3%. And there's information on pages 16 to 18 to kind of give you that information. So 2 to 3% keeps pace. Okay, you're kind of standing still, you're keeping up with the cost of living. If salary increases don't increase more than that 2 or to 3, it's really more like 3%. Employees don't move through the salary range in that system. So if it's anything over 3%, provides employees progression. 3% everyone's thankful for it. 3% generally keeps you up to with inflation. And we'll talk a little bit, well, on the next slide we will. Here it is. So this has a few of the bullets on this slide on pages 16 to 18 to put that 6% compensation pool for our faculty and staff into context. So you see the inflation, the COLAs for Social Security, rounding in that 3% range. And I can't emphasize enough that last bullet, difficult to fill and retain positions, that we have positions that sit vacant because folks have better offers from other places. They tell us, I can't take that AV manager job, Rick will say yes, because it's not an affordable wage for me. So what happens? Those positions sit vacant. We have folks who are doing we have employees who are doing 2, sometimes 3 jobs as we're trying to fill those high demand vacancies. So compensation is important. Some comparative data, and this is on page 16 in your budget materials. Another benchmark, just to align us with how we compare to the county. Non-rep means non-represented employees at the county, non-unionized employees at the county, okay? And then teachers and the library, all entities that the county funds, to give you context over time of how our pools, our percentages have lagged those groups. For the reason, please.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I really appreciate these slides of comparisons. Before you had comparisons among different counties and Anne Arundel County with the community colleges. Here you have comparisons among our neighbors, really. And this is very, very important. There's a comparison, there are differentiations among these groups, but I really appreciate this information. Thank you.
Great.
That's it.
Lovely.
Madam Chair, this is Joyce. I have a question.
Go ahead,
Can you hear
Joyce.
me?
We
Okay,
can hear
thank
you.
Thank you. Melissa, I give kudos to you and your team. You do an excellent job with the budget, excellent presentation, and a lot of clarification. I was reading through the budget, had a lot of questions, and I'm glad you brought the context around the questions that I had. But I have one question about this comparison chart, and words are important, as our president always reminds me. But my question is, and I hope I'm being clear, is there any other annual compensation provided to employees at AACU other than the annual compensation pool approved by the board?
I would say no. You know, the 6% pool, if you will, is an all-in pool, if you will, that is applied according to our salary programs or compensation programs for both faculty and staff. Once the budget is finalized, that pool might have to be adjusted, but whatever that pool ends up, on June 15th, when the county council approves our budget, that's how we implement the compensation changes. There might be some changes during the year, and there's a line item, I think, later in the presentation, where if folks meet certain criteria for promotions, they might get a compensation increase, but that's very, very small. So this is the only compensation increase for the college community. And it's not differentiated because in the comparative lines, in the columns for the other entities, the non-reps, the teachers and library, you'll see a reference to a COLA and a step.
Yes.
We don't have that. It's all in the 6%. We got rid of, we went to a market-based system years ago. That's the new system that we implemented. We left that traditional governmental model of COLAs and steps and went to a more sustainable, we think, fiscally sustainable model of that we have now. Does that answer your question, Trustee
Yes,
Price-Jones?
it does. Thank you
Okay.
very much. I
Great.
appreciate
Can
it.
I ask a question? Can you just give a little bit more context to what a market-based is compared to a COLA plus step?
Of course.
Thank you.
So a COLA and a step are applied across the board. I assume, I don't run the county's comp systems, but generally this is how they're applied, that folks move through a ladder, a chart, right? A COLA is applied where you are, and then you move down steps in that chart. Our system, I'm just going to speak to staff for simplicity's sakes, but faculty is similar. Our system is a little bit different. We have software that we use years ago for staff positions that we benchmarked all of our positions using this software, and it went out and got comparable salaries in the Baltimore, Washington metropolitan market for those positions. And we put all those positions into this system. When we will, through that system, it will tell us what the market kind of, I hate to use this term because I know it gets confusing, but what the market in that area is moving, almost like a COLA increase. So we adjust the tables, again, for staff to reflect the market. That's the 3%. We then, again, for staff, if the pool of funds, I'm just going to say it's for my simple brain, it's 4% is what the compensation pool is that ultimately is we're able to afford, then folks get an increase, 1% increase on their midpoint of their salary. So if it gets very confusing. If I am if I'm a staff accountant and I have a continuum of what my position is worth, I'm making it up, $50,000 to $100,000, midpoint, 75 there, roughly. I'm going to get, but I'm at $80,000. I'm only going to get an increase on the midpoint of that position. That helps to kind of manage the growth and slows down. Once you're at the market for your position at that level, then you're we feel like we're paying you what you should be paid. Slows the growth. Folks who top out, then they get increases, their one-time stipends once they're topped out for that position. I probably didn't do that justice.
No, that was very
Is that
helpful.
all right? Okay.
That was a very good explanation. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we can take a deeper dive anytime you want. If you want a work session on the comp systems, we can do that, but.
Can we talk a little bit about the pool? And you're going to think I'm crazy, but I'm just going to ask it. So we have a lot of unemployed federal workers now in our state. These are highly skilled individuals. I don't know if they can come into AACC and teach, either as part-time, presumably as part-time faculty. Have you been thinking about that? Does that even come into the equation? And am I insane?
No.
Just tell me.
Well, I think in certain areas, as we're recruiting for positions, we are seeing larger pools. And many of those folks, you look at their work history, they're coming many from the federal government. So there are some wonderful people out there. It doesn't always mean they're qualified. I'll let Dr. Milliner speak to the faculty recruitment process, which I think we're right in the middle of. So for staff positions, we're definitely seeing larger pools. Again, not everyone is qualified based on the job description. So I will say that. As to faculty, we're recruiting, I think, 9, 11?
We're in the process of recruiting 9.
I think that sounds right.
And then we had some, I think 2 or 3 left over from last fiscal that
Okay, 11,
we did not complete the searches for many different reasons. So this goes back to, I think, a part of the earlier conversation when Melissa was talking about salary and ensuring that we are staying competitive. It's very difficult, particularly at the faculty side, to compete with a 20-year federal government veteran who is at GS 13 or SES 15, where they're making $250,000 a year, and our starting salary for assistant professor is about $150,000 less than that. So we see a greater, pool or bigger pool on the staff side or the administration side because of the salary alignment. But we have seen many of them come in on the adjunct or the part-time faculty side.
If I may, Madam Chair, again, we require a master's degree as a minimum, so you're going to also have some limitations there.
Absolutely.
Great questions, thank you.
Does this market-based system that we moved to a few years ago, did that help with the compression issues? Or am I not putting those together?
No, excellent question. Yes, and so compression is when folks are hired into a position, let's just use the staff accountant position as an example. When folks are hired into a position, they're coming from outside and they are desiring a particular salary. There's a market for that staff accountant. In years when we haven't had raises, which is where we were, whatever this chart says, years ago, folks are staying static. No raises, folks are staying static. A staff accountant comes in and they just came from public accounting where they're getting raises and they demand a particular salary. If we want that staff accountant at this higher salary and we've not had raises, we have compression in that we might be trying to bring someone in at a level where our staff accountant sitting over here who hasn't gotten a raise is getting paid less than what this new staff accountant is demanding. So you get compression of salaries. You might hire them in, they're higher, this person hasn't moved, and you've got some equity issues there. Fair? So we carved out years ago, we carved out some funds out of this compensation pool, the 6% pool. We carved out funds to address compression and moved some folks up into what the market is. And then it gives you more spread when you bring in someone new. You want that person who's been here for a while, who has more experience, to have more spread between the newer person who's coming in. So we did market adjustments years ago. The key is what I said previously. If we need to fund our compensation system appropriately to ensure we don't get back to that point of compression again, where we don't have raises or we have smaller raises, and then we bring in folks who demand a higher wage, and we really work really hard not to do this, to hire someone at a higher level than what our current folks are sitting at.
Madam Chair.
Okay. Oh.
Yes. Just one comment. With the current economic environment and the large number of federal employees that have been laid off, I would suggest we still not count them out, even though they may have been making $250,000. And I know several of them, I was a federal employee myself, several of them that would welcome an opportunity to just have a job and take that pay cut. rather than to lose their home and not be able to support their families. So I would say that we shouldn't count them out in not being ready to accept, because when that job is posted, isn't the salary range posted? Okay, and so they know coming in what the max is, so. And maybe we can talk offline. I have some additional thoughts about recruitment, because for various reasons, for my children, I've taken a job that I took a large pay cut so I could be closer to home. So that we can talk later.
I can actually give a brief answer to that. We absolutely do not, anyone who's qualified, they stay in the pool and they move through the process. Many folks, while it might be on our application, they might disclose their current salary, but we don't qualify folks based on, or exclude folks based on what they might have been making. You're absolutely right, Trustee Price-Jones. We do disclose the salary levels for positions, so folks know that and they apply, and if they're qualified and have the experience, they will move through the process. We do not exclude folks based on salary.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If I may make one more point. I think it's important to note when we talk about our hiring process here is that we're playing things very close to the vest right now with filling positions. And we might have some very qualified people, but it's been difficult based on budget constraints to hire everybody we want to hire, regardless of what we might offer them in terms of salary. I just wanted to make that point.
And all of my colleagues to the right could offer you examples of the struggles that we've had as we compete with the Johns Hopkins, the technology company, Howard Community College, and we offer salaries, and folks say, I can go get $20,000 more over at Howard, so here I go. Or that's when we make the offer. We also have very, very talented folks here at the college. We give them excellent training. I'm thinking of folks in our financial aid offices, highly technical, complex, compliance-related work in financial aid or in advising. And we train them. They get great experience here. They can go and command higher salaries at other institutions. So it's challenging. And I forget if it was the chair or if it was Trustee Price-Jones who shared, that's where our benefits package, we can speak to and try to recruit folks. We have a generous benefits package. We have generous leave. We have, as I mentioned before, a flexible work policy that allows for telework and telecommuting and alternative schedules. Those are differentiators for AACC, for sure, in Maryland and nationally, that help us, non-compensation related items that help us attract and retain the talented staff that we have. Please. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to comment on that because certainly in my area, it has a huge impact with the complexity of the work that we do, not just in financial aid, Melissa mentioned advising, which also impacts the Student Achievement and Success Program, also impacts the Response Center. So it takes us about 2 years to fully get someone fully trained. So when we spend that kind of time and investment with someone to give students the best that we can in terms of someone's knowledge base, and to then have them get pulled away is very difficult. And before the board started giving some of these more recent increases that we've done that have been significant, not that we haven't had others, but I know there was an effort to help us catch up with, what you were seeing with the county and teachers in the library. We had Johns Hopkins who was standing up a Student Success Center. They were pulling 3-4 people from AACC. And so when we have that happen, it really gets difficult to try to replace those individuals. We've been able to stabilize a bit, and that has been very helpful.
And Melissa, can I just add, just anecdotally, just to sort of support what Dr. P just said, we run into the same issues, and IT is a little different because we compete across sectors, so it's, we just don't compete with other community colleges or four-year institutions. We compete with all operations for, system administrators and engineers and programmers and whatnot. So, you know, anecdotally, we've been in a situation recently where we've had a tough to fill position, and, you know, we've made 2 offers to qualified candidates. They've both passed on it for different reasons that we've discussed today. But, you know, it does put a strain on the staff. It causes people to have to do multiple jobs over an extended period of time. You know, it's anecdotal, as I said, it's a tough situation to be in, but in order to remain competitive, especially in this, you know, geographic region and economic market, I think it's important that we do these things.
Good point. All right, so for faculty, way back in 2005, the board set a goal to be ranked in the top 3 of the large community colleges. And on the next slide gives you a chart, you can see it bigger on page 15, that this is information we provide to the board each year. And CY is current year, PY is prior year, as you read the chart, okay. That, so this shows you that, again, it's a little bit dated. This is when the MHEC provides the data, but it is, again, another benchmark, to your point, Trustee Tuminello, a little bit more information on where we stand. So we've maintained levels at the associate and assistant professor. We're second. You see no change, prior year, current year. And we've improved a little bit from 4th to 3rd in the professor and instructor categories. And then we talked a little bit about part-time faculty. This chart compares part-time faculty rates. Note that this is more informal data that we obtain based on what's online, et cetera. Most of our part-time faculty are at that level 2. And that's where we rank second, and in fact, we're second across the board. Level 3 is a new level. Well, I say new. We added that level 4 years ago to provide a little bit of salary progression for our really important part-time faculty. And for us, that level 4, that's the level reserved for retired full-time faculty. That's where they come in, Trustee Tuminello. And as a reminder, that part-time faculty are now subject to the collective bargaining process. Okay. So with all that context, here we go into the operating budget for fiscal 27, and provide, as we discussed, some, if you look at page 6, you see here the budget development guiding principles. They've been tweaked a little bit over the years, but I think they continue to hold up. I think it's important on this slide, next slide, the small tuition and fee increases while maximizing enrollment. Okay.
Sorry, we were just wondering if we need to take kind of a
That would be lovely.
bio break.
That would be lovely.
We've been at it for
Yes.
a while, so should we take, how long? 10 minutes? 15 minutes?
What time do you want to come back, 10?
10 minutes?
We have a lot to go. Yeah.
Yeah, come back at 10. Okay, we're rolling on. Hope everyone had a good meet and greet with your friends.
All right, here we are back at it. So, I think we can go to the next one. I kind of forgot. So we are in the development of the fiscal 2027 budget. This chart reflects months of work. We build the budget from the ground up. So many of the folks online and behind me submit budget requests. This chart documents the process. So folks submitted 89 projects totaling $17.7 million. They submit their request to their deans and directors. They promote projects. They don't promote some projects. So you see 62 made it to the next level, totaling $16.4 million. And ultimately, as the revenue picture becomes more clear, we were only able at the President VP level to focus on base budget adjustments, and we'll talk about what those are now. This is a summary comparing the fiscal 26 budget to where the proposed 27 budget ends up, about an $8 million increase, and you can see the categories of where those increases are. So this is new money that we're going to walk through now. So we look at savings for our budget. This is a negative number because we actually reduced the base budget by this $107,000. We look for every dollar, and we identified that we have savings in hourly staff that we rolled into fiscal 27. So right off the bat, we reduced the rollover budget by this amount. We talked about the faculty salary goal, so just reminding you that the board set that goal in 2005. We've talked about compensation a lot. We'll break this down in the next slide. We do have compensation committees, one for faculty. We know faculty are subject to bargaining now, and we're going to be starting that process. Staff, through their compensation committee, requested a 6% pool. And again, a note that part-time and full-time faculty are subject to bargaining. So this breaks down the components of our compensation adjustments, and Trustee Price-Jones, as I mentioned before, the faculty and staff promotion amount, that's that $123,000 on this slide. That's that small pool of funds for folks who might be eligible for promotion. The 6% pool is $6.5 million. We also provide health insurance to our employees. We participate in the county's health insurance fund, and we have a 3% contingency. It's on a calendar year basis, so the impact on this budget is as of 1/1/27. Then some other adjustments. You might be wondering why that last number is a fairly large negative number. That's another area of efficiency that we do roll into the budget. It is a reduction of that rollover budget, so it's a reduction that's built into the fiscal 27 budget. This is where this represents true salary savings, turnover, of new hires, folks that we hired this year, versus the budgeted salary. So we roll that savings, $1.1 million, into the budget when we roll forward the compensation budget, generally October of the year. These are some smaller adjustments that have a corresponding revenue change, primarily due to changes in lab fees, lab fees that we charge in sections of classes that we offer to students. So there's a revenue and an expense. We talked a little bit before about legal expenses. We are seeing institutional costs, legal expenses increase as a result of accessing outside counsel. They are more expensive versus our in-house counsel, as the general counsel position is vacant. And institutional insurance is budgeted to increase. That's our business insurance, if you will, that the board approves each June. That's an estimate based on our current analysis of the market. So that's the liability insurances, if you will, automobile insurance, et cetera. So there's an allowance for that. Please.
How much of the legal expense was offset by not paying a salary and the associated benefits?
This $250,000 reflects what we take that into account. When we think we will hire the general counsel position, what salary savings we have, it probably assumes we're going to hire the GC position. Yeah, I'm looking at Sue and Andrew, yeah. So this is still the delta. We do have, we have compliance matters, we have outside experts that we still have to hire for investigations, Title IX, et cetera, grievances, et cetera. So this is based on trend that we're seeing. And if we don't, great. If we have savings there, then we'll watch it and we'll absorb that and make sure that we account for that savings when we get into 27. Doesn't mean we'll spend it all. Great question. Okay, yes, that was everything. So that's, again, the recap of the components. I do want to speak to, we talked about reallocation of resources. So this describes that everything that we just looked at is how we're spending the new funds in our budget. But I do want to highlight that during our vetting process, as we receive requests from our colleagues for investments and programs, we did identify areas of investment through reallocation of existing vacant positions or savings in office supplies or other areas. And we do that each year. We identify savings in our budget and then we reallocate to high priority areas, primarily focusing on student support and instructional support. So on this slide, this shows where we basically moved money around in the budget. We moved positions around. A vacancy in learner support services, we're going to repurpose it to have an adult learner admissions officer and a disability support services staff, positions directly in support of student success. So it's not captured in how we're spending the new money, but it's work we did behind the scenes to move money around to focus in these areas. And you see the other areas. There's instructional programs that we are providing additional support through reallocation in visual arts, honors, in athletics, a library database subscription funding, and a little AI in there, a little automation of non-credit student opinion forms, an important tool in getting feedback from our students. Those are the expenditures, so now we move into the revenues. The college, at the state level, the college is funded through what's called the CADE funding formula. We're in the CADE building, named after former Senator Jack Cade. The CADE funding formula ties a percentage of the annual state aid allocated per full-time equivalent student at select University System of Maryland institutions to the state aid granted per FTE to the community college. Doesn't that sound just so straightforward? There's a spreadsheet for it. What the bottom line is that new state funds are generally tied to how much University System of Maryland students are getting. We get a percentage of that. And then it's based on enrollment, our enrollment, all the community colleges' enrollment. The allocation happens based on enrollment 2 years ago. It doesn't matter this year because the governor's budget basically set CADE aside, set the formula, this beautifully complicated spreadsheet aside, and said we're capping the increase to all the Maryland community colleges, except for Baltimore City because they're considered a state agency. But all the CADE eligible, they're all getting a 3% increase. That's it. CADE, more of a guideline than it is a true formula. But I do want to, we have a couple slides here to talk about state funding because under law, the state has to fund the Maryland community colleges. How much is subject to the budget process? Andrew mentioned our three-legged funding stool, the state, the county, and student tuition and fees. In a perfect world, there are three sources. Each one would be providing a third, right? 33%, a third each. We'll look at a slide related to that. State, under CADE mapped out a plan of annual increases to the community colleges to keep tuition affordable. So the thing to remember about the next three slides is when the state doesn't pony up its share, which it rarely does, it has to be made up somewhere else through tuition rate increases. Maybe you see an enrollment increase. that generates tuition and fee revenue, and the county. So this slide just speaks to what that percentage tie. This is not the third percentage. This is how much a percent of the per FTE funding we get from University System of Maryland. So that's what the 29%. So the formula, the goal was to get to 29%. Think it happened once, maybe twice? Twice.
If I can interrupt just for a minute.
Please.
Have you heard that the CADE benchmark is going to go away completely? Because they've only done it for 2 years. I mean, it's kind of a joke that we don't get the.
Correct.
If we got full CADE funding, it would be just wonderful, but we
It would have
don't.
been $5 million in fiscal '27.
Yeah, it's.
Increase for us.
It's incredible, and, you know, I spent a couple of years as president of MAC, and so we had on the horizon, we thought this CADE was just going to get thrown out the window. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, that conversation was getting a little spicy. I think about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
At the state level, there were some studies being done. Andrew and I participated in some conversations about, well, what if we reimagined CADE at the state level, what would it look like? It kind of fizzled out. So what's happening is they're basically looking at CADE formula to see, okay, this is what the community colleges would have gotten under CADE. Then the governor's budget goes, well, we can't afford that, so let's just give them all 3% increase. So it becomes like a data point. And in the governor's budget for this year, there was a chart. The CADE funding formula, the spreadsheet was run, and it looked like the governor was fully funding CADE. We got excited for about 5 minutes. We thought we were going to get a $5 million increase, and that's what we would have been entitled to had CADE been fully funded. But buried in future pages in the governor's hundreds and hundreds of page budget, they undid it, and that's where they said, no, it's not the big increase. Everybody's getting 3% increase. So that's what was on the previous slide. So CADE is nothing, long answer to your, nothing formally that we're aware of is happening to disband CADE, but by action, it is.
Might as well not even be there. I mean, really.
It's more of a guideline.
Thank you.
Like the pirate code. Okay. So to your point, Trustee Uvula, what this means is, like, they fully funded CADE twice, if you believe Andrew. The delay, the impact on the Maryland community colleges in foregone revenue had they fully funded CADE, and this is a calculation MAC did years ago, $100 million in lost revenue to the CADE-funded community colleges over about, roughly 10 years. So that shows you the impact of the lack of state funding. Just more slides showing what's happened, to your point, Trustee Uvula, of what happens through the budget machinations that happen at the state level. They tinker with the increase, the percentage, and at the end of the day, as you saw in the previous slide, we're thankful. We wish we were getting $5 million increase, but we're getting a $1.3 million increase. Not what we were entitled to under CADE. We're happy for the increase because some years we've had reductions, but still not fully funded. I bet Monica's over there thinking, is she going to say this? So I'll say it. That MAC plans to advocate for removing that 3% cap. So that is part of MAC's agenda in the out years. So the legislation that enacts the budget has that 3% cap in place in the future. So that's one of MAC's priorities. Yes, Monica?
And
There she
to
goes.
re-add the hold harmless component.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
the two amendments they're proposing. The hold harmless, so it's based so you don't get less money the
Yeah.
next year based on enrollment.
Yeah. So that's the sad story at the state level. The county is discretionary, if you will, a discretionary funding partner versus the state, which we just talked about, is generally formulaic. And this $4.8 million increase from the county that we are requesting will help fund the compensation increase. And we've had conversations with the county. The next slide just shows the basis for justifying the $4.8 million request. It does help partially fund the pay package, helps offset what we just talked about, the minimal $1.3 million state funding increase, and helps maintain tuition affordability. The county has shared with us, and administration will change, but their approach to funding an increase for us is they expect us to do our part. So they want us, want is probably a weak word, they are basically told us that in order for us to expect any level of increase from them, they need us to be increasing tuition. That's the lever that we have discretion over. We can't do anything about the state. The county is going to give us what they're going to give us. We work really hard to ensure our students are successful. We retain them. We enroll new students and have a robust enrollment profile, if you will. The board can raise tuition and fees, and they've been very candid with us for several years to say you have room. County Council said the same thing too. You have room to raise tuition, so that's where we have to be. That's a sweet spot of, well, we don't want to, the board has set this as a priority. We don't want to go years without a tuition increase and then have to do a large tuition increase. Students have told us that doesn't work for us. We don't feel that's fair. That's not equitable. We would prefer, students have said, small incremental increases versus going years and then having to do a large increase. Trustee Moore, did you want to say something? Sorry. Okay. Okay. All right. Very good. So that's the county funding increase. Tuition and fee revenue, we talked about a little bit. This slide shows, it's got a lot here. This slide shows our tuition and fee revenue along with the tuition rate increase and the FTE. So full-time equivalent, that's enrollment. And we are basing our tuition and fee revenue on an enrollment number that's basically flat from what we are projecting for this year. It's conservative. However, that's an increase. We talked about, we're seeing an increase this year, so we're rolling that increase into a budget for fiscal 2027.
I remember.
Okay.
That's a good thing. I just want to make a comment for maybe anyone in the audience and any new members, and Melissa, you can speak to this. When we go to the county for an ask, we only ask for what we need. We don't pad this.
Right.
Thinking, oh, well, they're going to cut us anyway, and then we'll be at what we want. So I just wanted to make that comment. We're not a group that goes in and asks. We're going in and asking, this is what we need.
Correct. I
So-
think the president has said that at every budget we presented to the county.
That's right.
To the county executive and to the
She
county
has.
council. Yeah.
She has.
Yep.
Yeah.
Melissa, maybe for the benefit of the board members who are not on the budget committee, I asked the question in one committee meeting, the $5 tuition increase, what does that come to for the student?
It's for a student who is full-time, 30 credits in a academic year, it's $150. In a year.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you.
That's on page 22, I think, if you need that in your backup. There to do the math, but it's there. Okay. Where are we? All right. The next slide, oh, I can look on your screen. There we go. The next slide gives us, oh, here it is. Ask and you shall receive. So there's the 100, you have to do the math, but it's the difference at the very bottom, the blue, the 49.40 versus the 47.90. That's the $150. And I think what's important, Andrew said this, some others have said it, if you look at that $150 in perspective, it's a 3% increase. So it feels cost of living ish. Mm-hmm. The next, oh, I'm so sorry. No, please, sorry.
And how many students at the community college are on Pell Grants?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Or what percentage?
Yeah, I do think it's a little under 40%.
A little under 40%, okay. Because one of the things that I did was compare this to the Pell, as long as we can count on that, you know, and it gets there, yes, and that is a problem coming up. It is. Thank you very much.
I don't know if you heard my colleagues saying 30%. They don't have a microphone.
Oh, okay, 30%.
Checking in the back.
Got it. Don't say any more, it's going down.
So now, do we think that Pell, what is the latest going on with Pell and the federal government?
Workforce Pal? Do you want to?
Are we worried?
Oh, here we go.
I wouldn't say that we're worried. I think there's some changes in Pell, and the most recent change for Workforce Pal has been bipartisan, and, you know, that would expand Pell grants to job training, so we think that's a good thing. We're not worried right now. Yeah.
I was also just at the National Legislative Summit, right? And so I'm going back through my notes because Monica and I were going over percentage of Pell recipients, which I am pulling up. But there was a lot of, like, just to echo what Dr. Patterson said, is there's a lot of bipartisan support for Pell Grant, as well as the workforce. And I think the meaningful part, if I'm correct, is that Pell will also support a low credit load versus
That's
full-time.
correct. That's right.
All right, this slide shows an index that we use for over 4 years, how the college's tuition and fees for a full-time student compared to the median household income in each county, the largest plus Howard, which is contiguous. So we just keep an eye on this to watch the percentages, and our percentage, again, as a percentage of median household income, our percentage has remained the same at about 4%. So we still compare well to our peer colleges and Howard Community College. So the next slide, rounding out our revenues are the transfers to and from the Tuition Stabilization Fund and our auxiliary funds, plus other income. And other income is the interest that we earn on our cash balance. It's not a lot, but we'll take every dollar of it. And really, the budget includes a transfer of $3.3 million from the TSF. As I mentioned, we try not to have to make that transfer. We try to ensure that we have expenditure savings so that we don't have to make that transfer. But this year, we are projecting that we're going to have to spend down a little bit of tuition stabilization fund in our budget. And that budgeted amount is flat from the current year budgeted transfer.
If I may ask another question. Can we go back one slide to the affordability index? Can you please take a little bit deeper dive into what the affordability index means?
So, of course.
Because I don't think everybody
Of course.
might know that
So
yet. Thank
it's
you.
a percentage. So it's a mathematical calculation that compares what it costs to go to each college full-time. So what are the tuition and fees to go to Howard, ACC, Baltimore County Community College, full-time, as a percentage of the median household income in that county. So it's just a percentage of your household income on average, well, on a median basis. How much of your household income would it cost you as a family in that county to go to that community college?
So just to cut to the chase, the lower the number is, the better.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
great question. Thank you. The question probably everyone had in their minds, but was afraid to ask. Yes. Yes.
I just had one comment because I pulled up the numbers. So Pell recipients are 21.1%. Pell recipients. Oh, yeah, right. The Pell recipients, there's 21.1% of our students, yes, receive Pell grants. For last year, yes.
Fiscal year 2025. Got it.
And there's concurrence here, so, all right. Very good. So the Tuition Stabilization Fund, there's several documents in your book, in the 30-ish pages, 31 and 32, 34, about the Tuition Stabilization Fund. Again, similar to a rainy day fund, we've talked about it quite a bit. It is a one-time funding source for our budget, so just to be clear, we don't want to continually spend it because then it's all gone. The balance fluctuates based on how we end a year, so we may add to it. This year, as I said, we might be spending it. But there is a board policy, and that's on page 31, of maintaining between 5 and 10% of total expenditures. So we watch that, and there's a slide. Andrew, look at Andrew. So we're at 7% for this year, so that's right where we want to be. It's a measure of good, I think, fiscal policy, stewardship, et cetera. Middle States looks at this, and we've had conversation at times with them with the reviewers about what's an appropriate level. Years ago, we had the joyful experience of developing an MOU with Anne Arundel County. It's an MOU. It's not legally binding to the county council. They reminded us this many times when we developed it. But it does document our, at that time, agreed understanding on the college's ability to maintain that tuition stabilization fund and what the sources are. So that signed document is in your materials if you wish to read it. And Andrew popped up there for you, so you see as a kind of a fiduciary measure that we are within your policy of 5 to 10% at 7%, and that's on page 12. This is a chart showing the 3 funding sources. We talked about the 3-legged stool of our funding model, and the state is, if you have third, 33% each, the state is still below that 33% goal at 30%, so as we talked, not where they need to be. The county is at 38%, so they're showing up as a good funding partner. They may not give us the increases that we ask for, but as a total percentage of our budget, they've been generous, I would say. And the college at 32%, so getting closer to our target and more evidence of doing our part. And so this shows all that we've talked about in a summarized summary of the components of our budget. Most importantly, this is where 0 is a good thing. At the bottom shows 0, so a balanced budget. And this will be an exhibit in the budget in the action item that you will approve, hopefully, on Tuesday. So you'll see this document. And it's bigger on page 11. All right, so we also just want to provide to you, there's a lot more information in your budget books about OPEB, other post-employment benefits. This relates to health insurance, prescription benefits, dental and vision that we provide for retirees. And accounting rules, many years, this gets very accounting, technical, nerdy, but accounting rules many years ago required us to record, absorb the expense for the future liability each year for the amount that future liability changes. Before, we were only recording the expense as we paid those benefits. So we had this looming future liability that wasn't showing up anywhere. So the accounting rules changed and said, you better show that. That's an impending check you're going to have to write, so you should show it. So basically, pre-funding or funding the liability helps us reduce the college expense. And on the next slide, I will say we are in good shape here. We joined the county and the library. Later, the Board of Education came to the party, but we created a trust where we send some college cash for a few years. We created it and since 2021, the county has sent cash into the trust on our behalf. So you put it into this trust, the trust makes investments and earns returns, which helps to offset the amount of cash we have to put in to fund that future liability. So I think we're in really good shape there. Current market value of $36 million, this is at 12/31, on cash contributions of $20 million. So that's pretty darn good return. That's all Andrew and I, who sit on the board of that trust. Yeah. No, there's an investment advisor, and they're very, very, very good. And noted here, important, the county continues to commit to making payments on our behalf into that trust. We are required to submit a budget for all of our funds. So this document, again, you'll see this on Tuesday, This summarizes the activities of the non-operating funds in our budget, so that we call auxiliary and enterprise funds. So these are activities like our bookstore, our events and conferences services, dining services. That's the auxiliary. In enterprise accounts, that tends to be primarily our continuing education activities, our physical therapy program, workforce development. There's more details on page 28 and 29 in your materials. Basically, revenues we're projecting flat over the fiscal 26 budget, and if you look on those pages, we provide a little bit. We have a contingency line of several $1 million that we add in because the county gives us an appropriation authority. They approve this as one line item. All of this stuff they approve as one line item, which in this budget it will be $48.1 million. If we're going to spend $1 more, we get more financial aid funds, for example. If we're going to spend $1 more, we have to go get approval from the county. So we put in some contingencies because these areas really are managed as, most of them except for the restricted fund, are managed as self-supporting. So we might sell more books or T-shirts in the bookstore, or we might have more revenues from the Chick-fil-A revenue share that we get. So the county council approves this in total, and you'll see this in your materials on Tuesday, this slide. Okay. So any questions? You've had some great questions. We'll pause there because we're going to go through the multi-year planning tool. Andrew's going to walk us through that quickly, and then we'll look at our capital budget, and then you're out of here. Any other questions? Go ahead.
All right, here we go. This is a tool that we started several years back just to start to forecast and confirm that decisions you're making in this current budget cycle aren't going to have consequences down the road that we haven't thought about, right? So it really just gives us the ability to predict if we're going to run into any challenges in the future year. It is very important to note that this is not what you will see in future budget cycles. I can guarantee you won't see this in future budget cycles as a request. So when we look at these numbers for 28, 29, and 31, that will not be what you see next year in the budget cycle. It will change, most notably because it's not balanced. And so we will have to figure out a way to do that. So just know it's really just a tool for us to work through, make sure we're comfortable that we're not digging ourselves a hole that we can't react to and adjust to. So I will say my goal with all of this stuff is to make sure we're not in a situation where we have to make drastic, quick changes in operations, give us a runway to start to build up to this. All goes back to the conversations we've been having all day about the academic portfolio and resources review, the administrative services review. I want to make sure we have enough time to actually do the right work as opposed to making catastrophic one-time cuts just to get things balanced in the future. So we'll try and touch on those as we go through that. Again, just sort of working into that this is the way that we model this stuff out. What this does as we start to look at this, and this is all covered on pages, 48 to 55 in your budget book. You'll see a lot of pieces to it. We start with a baseline projection. Most of this starts with last fiscal year's actuals, the current year projections, and then we model out a couple of key assumptions, mostly with the stuff that we've already talked about today. What it starts to do is demonstrate very clearly that inflationary increases from our partners or lower than that makes it very challenging to fund our compensation and benefits program. We're seeing operating expenses on 85+% of our budget increasing higher than the funding streams we're seeing. So it starts to ask the question of how do you do that? Again, all that work we talked about earlier. You've got to look at operations to make sure we're efficiently deploying resources. It does also pinpoint we've got some other issues we have to deal with, particularly around the IT capital budget activity that we funded to make innovations. Dr. Krlovich already mentioned we're making those investments to get more efficient. So as we do that, we have to be disciplined and actually eliminate some redundancies in our software selections, in our operations. If we've automated a process, we can't keep doing the other process. So those are things that we continually have to look at, and it's clear from the model and the projections that that's something we have to continue to absorb. The other piece I think that jumps out at me, you'll see the models. We'll talk about state revenue for a second. The state revenue model has factored in that 3% cap The important part there is it's a cap. It's not a guarantee of 3%. And so we've modeled it in there at the 3% cap because it's sort of an indicator that the state thinks if they run CADE normally, it's going to be more than 3%. And so we've modeled it in there, which is actually higher than we did in prior years where we said, let's just run flat. State's not really, we're not comfortable with the funding stream for them based on what they've done in action. Well, we've modeled it at 3% this year. We run some other scenarios that kind of show what if that doesn't pan out, what's that look like? County, we've modeled it at sort of inflationary increases, but I'm going to reinforce the point today. We're making a very significant ask of the county this fiscal year, and it is the primary way to balance to our compensation program. And so when you look at this running out, primary expenditure increases in the scenarios we're showing is all compensation and benefits as well. We're saying reallocation of expenses is still going to continue to fund those operational increases. Melissa earlier referenced the fact that we're running out of those savings. When you look at our cost savings over the prior years, it's all old savings that we're still rolling into the budget. It's very challenging to keep doing that, so it's something we have to pay attention to. So we've got the revenue from the county being a very significant ask. If that doesn't happen, we're likely going to have to dial back our assumptions for compensation and benefits. The state number, we know we're a little uncomfortable with. Then it's tuition and fees. And we've had this conversation today at depth. The committee had this conversation. It is starting to point towards we should be expecting larger dollar amount increases in tuition and fees with the hope of keeping it at that inflationary level. So we talked $5 feels like more than 3% because it says 5, right? So it looks like more than 3%. But where we're sitting at today is $5 roughly inflationary. Running that out in the model, we're going to need to have that, or we have to have these other revenue streams picking up for us. The alternative to that is how do we reduce expenses? And that's the work, that's the really difficult stuff that we have to do at this point. So this is the revenue side. I've talked through all those pieces, 3% state, flat from the county, expenditure increases, not flat dollar amounts, but percentage-wise being consistent. And the tuition and fees piece. The other piece that I'll sort of draw our attention to, the other income piece, you'll see it's sort of like declining. That's because we're going to start spending down that tuition stabilization fund. So as you do that, you don't generate as much revenue on your cash balances because you don't have as much cash. I mentioned the expenditure side. That's effectively inflationary, but beyond the pieces for compensation and benefits, which we've modeled at 3%. We know this year we're proposing a 6% pool, but on average over the 5 years, if we can get back into that 3%, what does that look like? And this is the piece at the bottom I'll draw your attention to, the projected net surplus. So when you see things like a deficit of $2.4 million, it raises an eyebrow. To me, this is sort of a flag that's being raised at this point. It's different than prior years where you might have seen fairly similar numbers on the screen, a little bit higher this year maybe in the deficit range. The difference being, we talked about earlier, is we're actually projecting to use the tuition stabilization fund this year. That's a change for us. And that's something that we better pay attention to because once you start spending the tuition stabilization fund, it's not there for you in future years. Yeah, you don't pay your mortgage with your savings account because at some point the savings is gone and you can't pay your mortgage. So that's the thing that has really caught my attention as we look at the numbers and what's different than last year. So I would say a flag's raised. If we go into this next budget cycle and we're still spending the tuition stabilization fund down, we haven't figured out a way to balance to the general savings pieces. Hopefully some of the inflationary items we're seeing are slowing down a little bit. Then I think an alarm is going off. It's a bigger flag at that point. And so the point being is we want to have a long enough runway to do this work that's necessary to get us into that sustainable model. The other pieces down at the bottom, we're just tracking these pieces. Time to Care Act is legislation that's kicking in future budget cycles, so we know that's going to hit our budget. We already know there's going to be about $400,000+ in costs that are going to hit our budget going forward, so we've got that on here as well. And then you see this essential technology and deferred maintenance piece. That's the IT capital budget piece where we're making those investments. We know we have to pull that back onto the operating budget. We did some of that work this year. We're making faster progress than I anticipated, so that's a great step forward, and I think we're on target to be able to do that, but it's something we have to pay attention to in those future budget cycles. Okay, that was it. Yeah. So then we look at that, and that's just one forecast, and again, I'll guarantee you that those forecasts won't hold. If we were that good at our jobs, we'd all have enough money to make contributions to Volley, and we would have all of our problems solved. So we run a couple of other scenarios, and we really just turn the dials and categorize them into 3 different pieces. We have the baseline projection, which we just talked about, and then we have scenarios 1, 2, and 3 that basically say, like, what if things are better than we expect? The state comes through and is funding us better, the county's better, enrollment continues to increase. What does that look like for us? And then we do, what if things hold the same? And that's almost the baseline projection, just with some tweaks to the state funding piece, where we've modeled in the base projection, that 3% piece. In the same scenario, we went back to, like, what if the trend continues, where the state's not giving us 3% every year, it's more like 0.5% to 1%. And so that's a little bit worse. And then there's a worse scenario. What if things hold flat? Enrollment does not increase and we can't sustain the tuition rate increases. We start to see things with the county holding us flat or the state holding us flat. And the end result of this is, in every scenario, but things are better than they currently are, we're in a difficult situation. Like you'll see, they're negative returns, because we start to eke into the tuition stabilization fund. And that effectively goes to that negative number we saw on the previous slide. We've got to make some changes and come up with enhanced revenues or reductions in expenses to be able to make this sustainable. I think I said this last year in our conversation, is there anything in this budget cycle that I think is a huge caution that we shouldn't move forward with, that because it's going to dig us too big of a hole? And I think the reality is, if we connect our compensation program to the funds we receive from the county, we're okay. If the county doesn't fund that, there's no way we can support that compensation package, and we cannot do it. And so we'll have to make some adjustments depending on what that funding looks like, and then I think we'll get balanced again, and then we'll check back in again next budget cycle. What are we feeling? Is the flag getting higher? Is an alarm going off that we really make some more significant changes? But generally speaking, if we can get balanced in the year where we're not consuming the tuition stabilization fund funding, we're in a decent position, and we've got a long enough runway where 1 year's not a challenge, the second year's not. I don't feel good about it. I'm probably losing a little bit more sleep. The third year, that's when we really have to be making some more significant changes to do that. So the idea is, like, let's give ourselves 2-3 years to figure this thing out and start to make those changes so we're not reacting suddenly to changes. So that would be my summary of what the model is showing at this point.
May I make a comment, Madam Chair? I hate that model. Since day one. I mean, it's the kind of thing that you lose sleep over. I'm amazed that you are able to live with that, but it shows the reality of things. And the good news, I guess, for all of you that are new to the board, is that we've always made it work. We've always figured out a way, but you can't constantly use the tuition stabilization to pay current revenue bills. It just doesn't work that way. It's really for one-time charges. Is what it's intended to be. So, but I knew I have to sit through this again, and I did review this yesterday, and I said, gosh, I hope he doesn't bring this up in the meeting, but I knew you would. So, thank you.
And if I may, the tuition stabilization fund, as Vice President Beermore indicated a few minutes ago, we're held responsible by accreditation, middle states, for that. So there's only so far we can dip into that, and we can't. So, and then, because that would hurt us. So I know it's a long way off until we get reaccredited again, but we have to look at that now. So.
And to tie a bow on some headlines here, going back to where we started, this is why we did the administrative services review work. This is why we're doing the academic portfolio and resources review work. We have negative numbers. They're not good in a budget. Now, those weren't budgets, but those are projections. If you go out and extrapolate into the future, assuming the state, they're not going to show up. We're not going to see huge increases from the state. That's what our institution financially was built on. It's not going to be there, to your point, Trustee Uvala. The county, bless them, they're doing the best that they can. They're a good supporter of us, but they can only give us what they can give us. So then it's enrollment. We don't want to, budget is levers, right? They're dials and levers. We're careful about increasing the tuition rate. So to Andrew's point, revenues, that's one component of our budget. Then we look at expenses. We have to become more efficient. We're not going to AI our way out of this one, right? So we we have to look at the programs, look at how we do our work. How can we be more efficient? Do we need, sorry, Andrew, one less staff accountant because we're more efficient? Do we look at how do we look at our academic programs and we look at low enrolled courses? We don't have a program, or maybe we can still offer the course, but maybe we don't have that program and the infrastructure involved, and we reallocate that faculty position to areas where we have high demands, chemistry and other biology. So that's what Larry's least favorite aspect of this presentation shows us. So I just wanted to tie all of that back to what we've talked about. Okay. And not lose, because Andrew talks fast, sight of the plan is, if the county cuts us, we're dialing back that 6% compensation pool. That's for you all to be clear on, and for folks online and behind me to be very clear. That's what the plan is.
I also worry on that tuition stabilization fund that we got rated to the tune of like $5 million.
10.4 million.
Yeah, okay, 10.4 million, and that was a little over 10 years ago. But that's the thing you have to also balance. Even though we have an MOU, memorandum of understanding, they don't necessarily live by it. It just it depends on who the county executive is.
Correct.
So we have to be careful about it.
I was trying not to bring that up because you know it triggers me, but absolutely, that was a very difficult time. Dawn, we remember some very challenging conversations with the county in those years when they pulled back that 10.4 million from us.
I remember it well.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that I also, just in the circles I travel in, I'm being told by county council people, county executive, the county budget
Yes.
is going to be a mess.
Yes.
2026 for the county is okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm being told 2027 is very frightening. And tuition is not going to save us. Raising tuition is not going to save us.
It's such a great point. When we increase tuition by $1, it raises about $256,000. So, $5 tuition rate increase is $1 million. I mean, that's good money for us, but as an institution, that's keeping the lights on kind of money. Okay.
Madam Chair, if I could say something. There's been publicity, there's been talk about pain points, and you had that slide earlier with that phrase, you had a slide earlier with the phrase pain points. And we are aware of pain points from the faculty. What are the pain points from the staff that would say, hey guys, we're in this together, we're not going to drown, but we're treading water too? Does that make sense to you where?
It's such a good question. I think we've alluded to this, and I'll speak for my colleague. We could probably do hours on that, but I'll sum up by saying, cost of living for everyone. We know things cost more. We mentioned your BG&E bill. For some folks, double. Our employees feel that. I think for our employees, the challenges we have in filling vacant positions, folks feel that. We have folks who are doing the job of 2 and 3 people. They feel that. And the work, goodness, our college community supports our students. They believe in the mission, our employees believe in our students, and they are here because they believe in this institution and in our mission. The models, the examples that I just described, they come at a cost. I mean, there are people who work very, very hard, who are forgoing time with their families, who are working evenings and weekends, and I think that's very challenging for them. So it pains me to say what I said a few minutes ago, which is, if the county cannot fund this large increase, we're dialing back the compensation increase. And that's for, speaking purely of staff, because that's what you asked, they will feel that. There? There, okay. Great question. On that kind of sad note, the capital budget looks pretty darn good. Well, I think we're done building, but we'll renovate. How about that? So this slide is, you can expand, you can go to page 37 and see it in all its glory. This summarizes our capital request to the county, and especially for our newer board members, capital budget is where we have our multi-year building and renovation projects. So it's a multi-year budget, therefore, because those projects take more than 1 year mostly to complete. So the county requires us to submit a current year request, that's fiscal 27, plus 5, what we call out years, 5 years out, to show the whole picture of what that project is going to cost. Okay. So moving quickly through the individual projects. Let me go back, Andrew, sorry. On the previous slide, I think it's important to my point. You see that blue heading there, new construction projects? There's nothing there. So Trustee Uvula was our wonderful liaison on the development of the facilities master plan. There are no new construction projects in the budget. Health and Life Sciences was the last one, and we're taking care of the buildings that we have. We're renovating the buildings that we have. So that's the headline for the next, 15 slides. Okay, so looking at the renovation projects, we know that Dragon Building, that's the science building, circa 1980s probably, that's funded. It's wonderful that the county and now the state are funding this comprehensive renovation to the Dragon Building. What's important to note on this project is it was initially a bigger scope project. We were going to renovate the existing building, and we were going to build a smallish addition for the math classes and for math faculty. The estimates came in well over budget. The county said, you either give that building, shrink it back a little bit, or it's out of the budget. We said, well, okay, we'll shrink it back. So we reduced the scope. It's now a renovation of the existing building. There is no addition for the math folks, but we're going to come back to that because we have a solution for them. So this is a renovation. It's funded. Jim Taylor's in the back. It's on time and it's on budget. So it's great news. The HCAT, Hospitality, Culinary Arts and Tourism program, there's a lab and classrooms out in Glen Burnie in a county-owned building, and it's sinking. Okay, rumor is it's built on a former sawdust. Okay, so we need to get out of the building. The county does not want to spend the millions of dollars to fix the settlement issues. They don't want to spend that money. They've agreed to invest the money in an addition to the current Clausen Center for Innovation and Skilled Trades. County's going to fund that. It's funded. This is great. So we'll move the HCAT program out of the building, that's a picture of it, in Glen Burnie, into this addition to the Clausen building. And we'll also, I forget which one it is. Is it Sweet? I think there's Savory up in Glen Burnie, Sweet down here. We'll move the current kitchen that's in the Humanities building also into this addition. So they'll be together. That's great. Co-location, those folks love that. It's in the out years, but it's great that the county has funded it, and we're pursuing a state match for that. Okay, if you're tracking, the math folks, and the math classrooms are not going into the addition to the Dragon Building, so where do they go? This budget includes a new request to the county to fund, once the Dragon Building is open, there'll be space on the first floor of careers. That's where the science classes are now. They're going to move out and move into careers. That leaves some space on the first floor of careers vacant, so we'll renovate that for the bargain price of about, $4 million. Renovate that space and move math classes there, move math faculty there. They already have a math lab in this building, so it puts everyone, all the math classrooms and faculty and staff in one zhuzhed up location in fiscal '29. And that's a new request. We hope the county will fund it. We have been pitching it to various county departments, so hopefully they will fund it. Student services, these folks move into the Florestano building right behind me when that's renovated. That's also on time and within budget, so good job, Jim. Student services building is vacant. This will become a very engaging, fun, student-centric space. So there will be, all of the SGA offices will be there, Military and Veterans Center, Interfaith Serenity Space, food pantry, et cetera. So this is funded by the county, so that's another good thing in our capital budget. If you're tracking the dominoes here, so math folks move out of the math/old Child Development Center building. That building is vacant. So in the out years, fiscal 31, we'll be renovating that now vacant building. This is a new request coming into the capital budget as we look at design in fiscal 31. So those are all there's no new buildings there. That's all renovation of existing buildings. Then we have what we'll call our deferred maintenance kind of projects. So we have a campus improvements fund. This is where we tick off bigger maintenance type projects where we might need to, this is where we funded the repair of the bridge when the bridge was, it had to be closed for a little while. It's where we have emergency funds like that, but also we do some deferred maintenance type projects. It's where the recent transformer that went down and affected the bookstore and the testing center, we funded that repair out of this budget. We have some, you see some big numbers there, the 3.5 and the 2.5 million. We do conduct a external facility condition audit, bless you. That's where we look at all of the infrastructure on campus, and we look at where we might have high priority items that we need to address, like your house. You know, you need a new roof, you need a new air conditioner. It's those kinds of things for the whole campus. So we have identified and asked the county for funds, 27 and 28, for those big deferred maintenance type items. Oh my gosh, are we done? So there's the, oh, I didn't do walkways, sorry, I went ahead. Walkways is another one. We have to repair the walkways and the parking lots on campus. They need attention, they get cracks, they get settlement issues, so there's a small pool of funds that the county does fund for us to do that work. How did I jump so far ahead? Goodness gracious, my apologies. Systemics, lastly, is another deferred maintenance fund. We get state funds every other year, state facilities, renewal grant dollars, and county matching dollars. And this, there's nothing in 27, but you see every couple years we have funds, and this really addresses the larger items like big roof projects, chillers, air handlers, the big rascals in our budget that are high priority deferred maintenance projects. Sorry, I jumped ahead. So then all of that is encapsulated in this summary here showing you the current year by project and the out year cost in our capital budget. And really the county has been very good to us on the capital side. That's the 96 slides of your budget workshop, if you have any other questions.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
may I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, let Joyce.
Joyce?
Okay. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First, I'd like to give Dawn her accolades at leading this college and creating an executive staff that's so knowledgeable, so passionate, so committed to the college and the students. Dawn, this is going to be your last budget meeting, so flowers to you for what you've created here, and to the executive staff. I have every confidence that your budget that you present, I had a lot of questions, but you cleared them all up. So thank you so much for your commitment and your hard work. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I ditto those words. Trustee Moore.
Just a quick comment, a reminder again to the board. If you have any questions about any of this before Tuesday, please reach out to Vice President Beardmore. She will take the opportunity to go over this with you so that Tuesday when we vote, you're comfortable in what you're voting for. So thank you. And again, thanks to you all of you up there, for the wonderful job you do on this. Thank you.
I would like to thank the Budget Committee members who are here, Dr. Lindsay, Vice President Beardmore, and her team for their thoughtful work and dedication throughout this budget development process. As discussed, we will vote on the operating and capital budgets at our next board public session meeting on Tuesday, February 24th. At that meeting, just to let people know, we have invited R.H. Perry, the firm selected to assist with the presidential search, to provide a brief presentation on their consultant team, outline the search process, and share opportunities for the college community to engage. With that, this workshop is adjourned.